everyone, Phoenix Knight here. Welcome to the channel, and welcome to Mystical Munchies featuring the Ticket to Ride official cookbook. We're starting this month's cookbook with the appetizer, cheese crisps. As this is another recipe with stories, let's tell the story for this one. Ever wish nachos were just one huge pizza-sized chip that you could devour all on your own? Or, if you're feeling generous, share with your fellow competitors? Arizona does it right with cheese crisps, a sort of modified quesadilla spruced up with the addition of caramelized onions and roasted green chilies. Well, we'll find out how right Arizona does with these. Now, just a comment about this cookbook. I was initially surprised that Ticket to Ride had a cookbook, but the more I thought about it, the more I'm like, you know, you got all these locations in the United States. You could easily do a cookbook themed around the various locations in the United States, which is what this cookbook does, and we'll see that over the course of the month. Anyway, as usual, the ingredients are waiting for us at the table, so let's move in that direction. In order to make this recipe, the recipe calls for 2 yellow and 2 red onions. I'm using 1 red because that's actually a pretty big onion, and I'm not admittedly a huge fan of raw onions. A teaspoon of salt, 3 tablespoons of unsalted butter that's been divided, a 1/4 cup of water, a large flour tortilla. This one might be a little bit small, but it's not horrible. 1/2 cup of grated Mexican-style cheese, and a 4-ounce can of roasted green chilies. I'm using mild because, once again, heat and I don't get along very well. With that, let's move into the kitchen and start putting this recipe together. We're going to start off with our saute pan. We're going to start off by pouring the onions. The teaspoon of salt, which I've got right here. That can go back up. The water. And 2 of the tablespoons of the unsalted butter, which I've got right here. And we're going to set that over medium-high heat. So we want this at about a 5. See if we can't break these onions up a little bit. Oh, trying to break these up without sending everything flying on me, but that's proving to be a little bit difficult. I suspect these will break up the more they start cooking anyway, so that should be a little bit helpful as well. So we're going to let these cook, and I'm going to work on breaking them up until they get to be translucent but not brown yet. and the water is mostly evaporated. At that point, we're going to take the heat down to medium-low and slow cook the onions for 45 minutes and stirring every 5 to 10 minutes. We'll remove from the heat once they turn a dark golden brown. I'm going to turn the camera off when we're to the point where I'm ready to start the timer on slow cooking the onions, because I'm not going to bore you guys. I'm not going to bore you guys with 45 minutes of watching these onions slow cook. Because I do like to pretend I have redeeming qualities on occasion. I'm getting some other things ready here. Let's see, that other tablespoon butter is going to need to be melted, so I'm getting that into, I'm going to get that into a mug so I can melt that when I'm ready for it. And then I'm going to start the oven preheating to 350, because I'll need that for a step later as well. Thankfully, the butter is at least melting quickly. So yes, I know this is another boring part of Mystical Munchies, but again, you guys know I like to do some of the important steps on Mystical Munchies in real time. And I figure once we get to the sorry, I was just running a little bit of water so I can do some cleanup on the counter. Once we get to that translucent point where I want to start the timer on slow cooking the onions, then I'll shut the camera off. So that's kind of what's going on here. We're just watching the onions get to where I'm ready to start slow cooking them in real time. But once I'm ready for that, then we are going to turn the camera off. So while we're waiting for the onions to come up, I do want to chat a little bit about some upcoming content on the channel. I don't know exactly when it's going to be, but I did download a copy of Replay Baseball with the 2014 season as the demo season, where you can play about 20% of the season. Fortunately, I was able to find several games in 2014 and downloaded those off of digidugout.com, which is where I get my historical score sheets from. And I own the 2014 season in Season Ticket Baseball. So I don't know exactly when that's going to be coming up, but at some point in the next month or two, we are going to have some streams around testing Replay Baseball, so I can decide what stat keeping program I want to use when I get into my 1985 season. Speaking of my 1985 season replay, I do also have that cut out and print. I do have that all cut out and sorted out in Season Ticket. I just need to get a mailer so I can store that in. Then we're also going to be doing some side-by-side testing once I decide what stat program I'm using, whether it's Digital Diamond or Replay Baseball. We'll see what program I end up using for that. And then once we make that determination, I'm going to do some side-by-side testing on both Inside Pitch and Season Ticket for the 1985 season, so I can determine, okay, this is the system I'm going to do my 1985 season replay in. As of now, I'm about 90% of the way to switching that replay to Season Ticket. When those streams come up, that'll probably be the last 10% when I make the decision of, yeah, we're switching the 1985 season from Inside Pitch to Season Ticket. So that's kind of my ramble of where things are at on that front. I'm also playing around a little bit with potentially shortening the blocks, the block days that I had. So when I did my 1991 payoff pitch replay off channel, I did 1 game per 5 days of baseball and fast played the rest via fast score baseball. Given how stream testing worked, and it actually worked pretty well, where I'm at a point now where I could easily say, yeah, we'll be able to play, where I could play every day of the week except for Wednesday with a season block. I could probably get away with shortening the block days to as little as 3 days. What I'm thinking right now, though, is going to one game per 4 days of baseball, because I do still like the idea of having the regular season take most of 2 months, and then by the 3rd month I'm into the playoffs. I'll have to play around with that a little bit more, because I figure the schedule is going to be a little bit awkward either way. So maybe we start with a game per every 4 days of baseball until we get, say, into September on the replay. Then we start shortening the blocks as we get the pennant race and the playoff hunt into greater focus. So we'll see how things play out on that front. I'll definitely be doing some more baseball testing in the interim period, both on and off channel, while I decide which system I'm doing 1985 in starting in January, whether that's going to be inside pitch or season ticket. I definitely was not happy with how inside pitch went, and I think my thing is, I really like the narrative, and I talked about this during Pino with Phoenix. I really like the narrative you get out of inside pitch, but the trade-off there is more explicit narrative makes for a more complicated game, and I'm starting to get to a point where I can, and I mentioned this during Pino with Phoenix, I'm getting to a point now where I can start filling in a little bit more of the blanks on that narrative. So I'll have to think about what I want to do in terms of getting the seasons, in terms of what system I want to do this season replay in. So I think we are getting to a point, there's still a little bit more water in there than I would like, but we are getting to a point, I think, where I'm ready to start the timer, so I'm going to shut the camera off, start the timer. Again, what we're going to be doing here is I'm going to reduce the heat to medium low and slow cook for 45 minutes, stirring every 5 to 10 minutes. I'll take them off the heat once they've turned to dark golden brown. So I'm not going to bore you guys with watching this cook, but I will start the timer. And now that the timer's been started, we'll shut the camera off and we'll come back after the onions are done. The onions just finished and they're off to the side. I know that was about a minute by the power of editing, but yes, it really was just under an hour. So now we've got a pastry brush right here, and we've got the other tablespoon of butter that's been melted. So we're going to brush that on both sides of the tortilla. And I did line I've got the pizza pan here because they call for a cookie sheet, but my pizza pan was the only thing I trusted enough to be able to fit the tortilla on there. I lined it with parchment paper to make cleanup a little bit easier. It might not crisp up as much, but we'll find out about that. Okay. All right, now we can go ahead and flip this and we'll brush the other side. We'll just go ahead and pour the rest of that on. Okay. We'll put those both in the dishes. And then that's going to go in the oven for 6 minutes until the edges are slightly brown, and then we'll pull that out of the oven. So, we'll move the camera just a touch so I can get at the oven. And we'll set a timer for 6 minutes. Not 20, Phoenix. There we go. 6 minutes. So we'll come back to that once the tortilla is out of the oven. I was not expecting this tortilla to puff up this much. Hopefully it won't cause any problems. But now we're going to flip the tortilla over. Actually, that seems like it crisped pretty nicely, so it should be fine. Now we're going to add the cheese in an even layer. So we've got our 4-cheese Mexican blend right here. We'll go ahead and crack that open. Once I find whichever, there we go. I was going to say once I find a side to tear it on. Okay, I'm going to leave a little bit of space toward the borders. Actually, we can probably just put this whole thing on there. Let's do that. Then we want the chilies and the onions. So here are the chilies. Thankfully there wasn't much to drain. So we'll spread those out a little bit. These are mild as well because, as I've mentioned, heat and I do not get along very well. Those can go in the dishwater. Give my hands a quick rinse. And the onions, which I don't think browned as much as I would have liked them to, but they're probably fine. Spread those out a little bit as well. Okay. Those can move into the dishes as well. We'll move the camera so I can put these in the oven. So we want this in for another 5 to 7 more minutes until the cheese is melted. So we'll put it in, set the timer for 7 minutes. There we go. And we'll come back to that in about 10 minutes, I would say. Here's our first look at the cheese crisps as they have just come out of the oven, probably about 2 minutes ago, I would say. Last thing we're going to do is we're going to take this handy dandy little pizza wheel here, slice it up. Actually, it seems like it got pretty crisp. I was worried about that by lining the pizza pan with parchment paper, but it seems like it worked out. See if we can separate that. There we go. Okay. And I'll go ahead and plate one of these, and I'll meet you guys over at my desk for the taste test. I've got one of the pieces of the cheese crisps over here for the taste test. As I have mentioned a few times, I am not a big fan of spicy food, but I tried to mitigate the risks as much as I could, mainly in getting as mild a chilies as I could. So I imagine that's going to be really the only spicy part here, but let's give this a taste and see what I think. It's not wanting, there we go. I was going to say it's not wanting to come apart for me, but there, I got it. It's not too bad, actually. There definitely isn't enough of a kick there that I was noticing it. And the chilies are definitely going to be the spiciest part of the recipe, depending on how hot a chili you get. So the more you want heat in this one, grab a hotter chili. But that will be another episode of Mystical Munchies in the books. Next week, we're making the side wild berry salad. As for the games coming up, tomorrow we're going to be starting the 2024 Summer of Lovecraft with the first leg of the campaign as we play Eldritch Horror. Wednesday, we're back to our normal video night as the Call of Cthulhu adventures start and we find ourselves alone against the flames. Thank you for watching the video. Please give the video a thumbs up and subscribe to the channel. Be sure to turn on notifications so you get my content. Be well, stay safe, take care of yourselves and your loved ones, and I'll be back with more videos in the future. Until then, take care everyone.
Thank you.